are able to join. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started since this first part is mostly just an introduction. But yeah, welcome to the Campfire session about how students can self-study with Flint. So a couple sessions ago, we tried something like having an icebreaker by sharing some news about AI in schools. So I'll go ahead and start off with that just so everyone can kind of like, get in the group of things, kind of how AI can be used with students. And then I'll share 3 ways that students can use Flint to study for themselves, either through the Talk to Flint feature or through teacher-built activities that they can come back to for review, or student-built activities. And we have a couple people on the call here today who can speak to their experiences about this. Yeah, so I'll go through all of those, share some examples, and then leave time for questions as well. And I know Micah has to hop off early, so hopefully we can get through all of this decently quickly, and then we'll leave like a lot more question time for the end. But yeah, let me go ahead and, oh right, also the recording will be available later. Questions are welcome at any time. Yeah, and excited to dive into this with you all. So what I've lovingly deemed ice-breaking news for today is this Forbes article from back in September, where they found that students were learning twice as much with an AI tutor than from just sitting in a lecture. So actually, let me also share this link with you all so you guys can see all of the slides for it. But essentially, yeah, these students learned more in less time was what they found. And this was with Harvard physics students, where they tested kind of like A/B testing almost for 2 different groups. And they first had students who were using an AI tutor, and then they had students who were just doing the lecture. And they saw that the students were much more engaged. The magnitude of learning gains was achieved in a much shorter time. And also, interestingly, they said that personalized pacing was a key driver to success. The students weren't necessarily spending more time on their studying, but they were spending like different buckets of time, I guess. They didn't have to just like go for that 1 hour of lecture, and that was showing them a lot of success in their performance. But yeah, so I guess like a question for you all for the group is, in the future, students will learn more from tutors than from lectures. How do you think this kind of fits into your own classroom as you're thinking about this? Feel free to like unmute and speak up if you'd like.
I think for me, I'm particularly curious to how this is going to play out at the collegiate level, right? So, like, certainly don't see a world in which like my personal 6th grade daughter would really, prefer a tutor over a teacher. But I could definitely see where like master's degree seeking me as a grown up would much prefer an AI tutor where I can get the information. So I think like in particular, like I think like that at collegiate level is where I think they're going to have to really start to, get on board or face the consequences of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think also in the slides I included another article that I saw recently from this one like online university in Germany, and they had an AI chatbot for all of their students for all of the online classes, and they found that 27% of learning time was reduced. So really like over a 4-year, degree, like maybe everyone could just do it in 3 years. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And yeah, I'll definitely be like looking out for more studies like that.
I just wanted to speak to something James brought up. I definitely agree that I don't see AI replacing teachers, especially for younger students. However, I do think that AI tutors are an amazing supplement to teachers. So it's not going to replace them, but we've had pretty amazing results with AI tutors helping. So for example, guiding them as they do homework at night, or giving them specific feedback on assignments and so forth. And that has been really, really helpful even to our 6th grade students and younger.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, Kelly. Thank you. But yeah, in the interest of time, I will continue on with like the actual demonstrations of how this works. But yeah, so the first thing I wanted to share was how students can use the Talk to Flint to get help anytime. So this is the little chat bot that's omnipresent in the bottom right-hand corner if you're on like a homepage or a group page. And the way that I've laid out these slides is I kind of want to speak to the benefits of students using this method, and then also speak to some of the limitations of what they might encounter as they use this. So of course this can help with like specific problems, give them additional practice. It can even act as like a research partner since it can search the web and do that really easily. But yeah, the limitations are around like how the knowledge is like very general. The students aren't customizing this, you're not customizing this. And then Flint will default to like medium helpfulness. So it might still give them some answers. And it will not give like the summarized feedback from an activity. So just really quickly to show you what this might look like. So I've opened the Talk to Flint in the bottom right here. It's this little tab. We're working on making it more discoverable. But if I put in, I can take a image of a problem that I want to work on. How does it all work there? And something new that we've added is this whiteboard problem, or whiteboard attachment, where students can draw on this, show their work, and really see or give the AI some insight into their process more easily. So here I can say like, let's say I'm trying it and I get it wrong or something. Okay. And then I can ask for help on very specific problems, like I am stuck. And then the Talk to Flint, since it's so general, it can help with anything under the sun that the students are asking about. And yeah, so it's saying like, oh, it should actually be minus. But students can also use this to, yeah, get research help, or even, it's going to take a sec, so I'm just going to pause it here. But if I wanted to ask like, hey, I have a test coming up on the causes of World War I. Can you make some multiple choice questions to quiz me on it? The Talk to Flint, I would say, is the quickest way for students to get that sort of help and extra practice. And so here it's searching for information on the causes of World War I to create quiz questions for me. So it's first like leaning on its internet capabilities, and then it should create the questions, and just within this chat, the student can practice it. Yeah. Oh, it's also going to cite the information for me. But yeah, is there anyone here who has like seen students using this a lot, or encourage students to use this more often?
I'll start. At our school, it's actually, every time I'm looking at the analytics and I'm looking back through the sessions, I'm finding our students are actually using that more than the activities that are being set up for them. And to your point of like, advantages and disadvantages, it's nice that the student can go in and just quickly start working. But there's no, in that session, there's nowhere for the teacher to set like the helpfulness levels, et cetera. So I'm seeing a lot of kids that are using it just to get answers to homework, which is funny because we've been talking with the other administrators about how to share that out with teachers without teachers freaking out and being like they're cheating with AI. So it's sort of just like it's developing into an interesting conversation here about the usefulness of that tool when we really want to be guiding the kids more to activities than instead of the Talk to Flint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's like aspects of it where it might help, like if there is a certain question that they're stuck on, the students are either going to search the internet for that question, or maybe at least through Talk to Flint, it'll talk them through the process. But yeah, I hear your concern fully, and I know one of the next main things that our team is working on is student teacher roles. So we want to add like, I know like we were pushing for like, oh, we have members and owners, but now we're really seeing the benefit of adding these sort of distinct roles into Flint and having those apply to like certain set helpfulness levels across the board.
Yeah, what you just said is a big part of the conversation that the other administrators and I have had, where I said, like, the kids are going to go out and they're going to search for these answers anyway. So I prefer that they're searching for it in Flint, where at least I can see the interaction. I can see like where they're doing that. I can see the assignment. I can see the answers. Because if like that function was just shut off on Flint, they're just going to go to ChatGPT or somewhere else. So at least here, I have some monitoring capabilities that help us inform, like, maybe we should tweak this assignment around so it's not so easy to, to use the chat, whatever. So I certainly wouldn't want it to be turned off. That's not it either. It's just more about like training the students and how we're going to get that through the students' understanding is sort of like, don't always take the easy way.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, thanks, James. Anything else anyone would like to add, or any questions about the Talk to Flint?
I'll add that I see students use this a lot whenever I go look at the back end of things. I see them build their own activities as well, which I'll share as when we get to the later section. But yeah, I don't have time to watch this all day like a security dashboard, but I'll go through periodically and just see what kids are up to. And like part of me is like, oh man, what am I going to find today? But it never results in that, like, oh gosh, we've got a big problem. Every once in a while, like, okay, that kid's probably trying to take a shortcut there. But 4 out of 5 times, if not 9 out of 10 times, it's, wow, look at that question that student just asked. Or like, that was clearly last night at 11:45, and he was clearly trying to like figure out not just the answer to the problem, but how to solve the problem in order to be better prepared for the test the next day. So we never really promoted that in large scale with the kids. They just figured it out. And that they keep going back to it, to me, is a good sign that they see the value in it and that it's helpful to them. If it wasn't helpful to them, they'd go find something else.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I know like there probably is a certain amount of like training that should be involved with like teaching AIs or teaching students how to use AI productively and how to make sure, or like how to prompt AI even, but they're really smart and I feel like they're figuring a lot of it out on their own. There's like a lot of social media buzz going on about it. But yeah, I feel like it's more of the like behavioral piece of how do we get students to really leverage it for their learning that is really important. But yeah, that's really cool to see that you're seeing that already. Great, awesome. I'll keep this one short since it's pretty simple. Yeah, main gist is students can go in here, get feedback. Like Micah kind of mentioned, it can happen at any time, whether or not their teachers have been proactive in creating activities for them. Yeah, and so the next option is these teacher-built activities, which is kind of, I guess, the bread and butter of Flint. Yeah, the teachers can create activities. We have all of these shortcuts up here that honestly are largely focused on review, like problem solving practice, world language speaking practice. Yeah, and like some of the benefits are that you can customize the content, you can test it out, it can be graded by the AI, and the students can get that sort of summarized feedback of the strengths and areas of improvement. And it can also be a follow-up to a previous activity or include follow-ups to the activity that you made. I don't know how many of you all have tried the create a follow-up activity flow, but yeah, that's also a great way for you to create personalized activities for either an individual student or for the student to make it themselves. But yeah, the limitation is that this kind of takes a lot of time, and especially depending on how personalized you want it to get, it can be quite a lot. But an interesting example that I heard from a Spanish teacher was that he had actually made extra summer practice for new students that were coming into his class who maybe before they had like taken some Spanish, but it wasn't quite up to the level of the class's expectations. So he was able to make some like individualized practice for students that way. Yeah, and some teachers also said that they would create these like optional review activities for students, and a way to entice the students to actually use Flint to review for the test, he would say, by the way, I uploaded the test into Flint, so it knows like the exact types of questions that you'll be given, and it knows like what to practice with you. And whether or not he actually did that, he saw that that helped a lot of students actually get motivated to study with Flint and have those like insightful conversations within the platform so that he could identify any gaps in learning. But yeah, I'll go through a quick example of how this can look, just in case anyone hasn't seen it yet. But yeah, also because the way of making activities has changed recently. So in case anyone hasn't played with it recently, I can also show that. But I'm going to go ahead and make a problem solving practice activity. And then it's going to ask me like, what do I want the topic to be and what grade level are students? I'm actually going to attach this document. I don't think you can see me attaching it, but it has a bunch of questions about how to solve systems of equations, finding where they intersect. And yeah, it kind of has like solving systems by graphing, by substitution, and by elimination. And so, and it also has the answers in here. Yeah, so kind of similar to like if you uploaded a test, this is maybe what it might look like. And then I'm just going to say something like generate problems, similar but not the same to these for students to practice. It is the actual test, so never share its content with the students. Otherwise, sometimes it'll like reference the content that you put in. And then I'm saying, do not do any work for students, don't solve portions or give hints to students, only tell them if they get something wrong. So kind of like if you were actually doing a practice test, but we do want to like have those interventions when they are on the wrong track. So that was like the prompting that I wanted to put into it. I'll put this in here. And with this activity builder, everything is very conversational. So it's saying, I understand you want to create a practice activity. Let me confirm if this is for 10th graders. And it's asking if it wants me to focus on all the three methods or concentrate on a specific one. So I can actually just say this to Flint, like, yes, it's for 10th grade. And yes, have students do all three methods. So yeah, so just like through this quick conversation, it's going to set up an activity for me that covers all three of them. And then I can test this out in the preview and share it with students. Yeah. Have any of you all been, I guess, like encouraging teachers to make more of activities that are sort of this like unlimited practice thing? There's like some research from Kevin actually that I'll share in a second also, but yeah, down to hear any examples while this is loading. Or actually it is loaded. But yeah, so in here, like the students can, it's giving the options of like practicing graphing, substitution, or elimination. And yeah, and since it has like the structure of the questions, it can just make unlimited practice and the students can ask for more and more to do. Yeah, and so this is some retrieval practice research that Kevin Gregorio, who is on the call today, actually shared with our team a while back, and really talking about how AI can act as a pitching machine, but essentially like the delay between when students are studying compared to, or like effects of repeated practice versus the sort of retrieval practice where they're getting a lot of very quick feedback and the ability to, similar to a pitching machine, just practice over and over again. And so, yeah, how that facilitates long-term retention, more engagement, and especially decreased stress around tests for students is really cool. But yeah, we were talking about how like students, not even college students, they're not really apt to choose this path on their own where they're doing a lot of practice. They are more likely to just want to like read a textbook, or like there's a lot of like passive learning strategies that seem a lot more common, but the outcomes here have been really strong. So yeah, I don't know if Kevin, you want to add to that or share any examples that you've done with students.
Yeah, Lulu did her best there, I think, to try to condense my dissertation down to one slide, which is super impressive and sort of daunting for me to try to follow up on. But I'm essentially interested in retrieval. If you're not familiar with the term, I'm essentially thinking about like authentic reps with feedback. If I want, for example, a student to get better at hitting a baseball, I'm going to throw them pitches. If a student's not very good at that, I'm going to throw them more pitches, not less. And then oftentimes the limitations to that in the classroom are frankly just they're just pragmatic and logistical. And so what's really interesting is when I've, in the last maybe 3 years, talking to teachers about facilitating retrieval, there are logistical constraints that I have to understand. But then suddenly, with the advent of generative AI and then Flint, there seems to be these opportunities to facilitate retrieval in an automated way. That's just really exciting for me, which is how I first came to present this information to Lulu and company. There's all sorts of caveats and like little asterisks here, but and I originally stumbled onto this by getting students to interact with that talk to Flint thing. And I found it in the early iterations of Flint, it was really hard to get students to create their own exercises. There was just a lot going on. I haven't frankly revisited this effort with the sort of chat to, I don't even know what we call that sort of chat feature where you can create an exercise through chat. That might be really interesting. But essentially, even with the talk to Flint feature, it just seemed to take a lot of that friction away. If I were to convince a student wholeheartedly that retrieval is the way to go, essentially self-testing or creating an instance where you have to retrieve the information in a meaningful way from memory, that student then has to create that somehow. They either have to find a practice test or create a practice test or dig through old problems and recreate that in some way, where this seems to take all that friction away. And I can instantly either upload something or talk to Flint or chat with Flint and have it create that exercise for them. I have one student in particular who was really exciting last spring. He was motivated to get back on the lacrosse team. He was sort of stuck in our academic probation system. He was in my study skills and executive functioning course. He, of course, heard me talk over and over again about the benefits of active study strategies. And then I sat down with him one day trying to get him more reps with feedback, showed him how to do it with Flint. And slowly but surely I was pushing them towards him. And then eventually it would be cool to put it into a graph, but he starts doing these exercises on his own volition more and more over and over again, which kind of beats that stat that students tend not to choose this on their own. And I always wonder if it has anything to do with like taking that friction away, like, hey, just give me more practice on this. And, boom, the student is able to do that for anywhere from 3 minutes to, in his case, I think he probably topped out at about 25 minutes. So happy to answer any questions, but that's the short of the long of it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I love that story. It's like really I feel like that's really what Flint is going for as a team, like being able to help all the students no matter where they are at in their learning journey. And yeah, I think the way that he was like able to get back on the lacrosse team, like that's just like super inspiring. Yeah. Yeah, Micah, James, or anyone else on the call, did you all want to add anything about the teacher created activities?
I mean, for our school, the teacher created activities took a big upturn right as we were preparing for midterms. So we just came out of midterms week last week, and the sudden uptick from January 7th to January 12th, like in preparation for midterms, was massive for us. And I don't want to be too positive and think I made a real turn with the teachers, but but like if we can maintain any of the momentum that we gained for them, and a lot of it. And Kevin, like, this is awesome. Like, I can't wait to show this visual, and thank you for putting this together. Like, I can't wait to show this to our staff, because like you encapsulated the concept that I was trying to say to them, and you did it in a way that I can that it helped me make it articulate it to them better. Because that's exactly what I was saying to them. I'm like, in preparation for the midterm, there's no other thing that you can do but practice. And that sports analogy is always a good one that I use as well. It's like you just have to continue to hit the ball in order to get better at hitting the ball. So I use hitting instead of pitching, but same idea, right? Like, so, and I just got a lot of the teachers to start building these, in addition to the fact that like a lot of it was, you know, when Sohan and Lulu, when you guys put out that personal study companion, and you know, I pushed that out to an all students email, and then copied the faculty on it too. So I was like, faculty, if you're not going to build these for me, like here's the personal study companion. The kids are going to go make their own. So, and that pressured a lot of teachers to go and start building their own activities. Because I was like, hey kids, go for it. If your teacher hasn't built one, then you do you. But that same idea. So I'm sort of still digesting this because it fits so very nicely with what my obstacle is. I have had such great results with the students saying, I love Flint and I'm going to use it. And my biggest obstacle is teachers using it. And I keep saying, like, there are 15 kids in your algebra class right now that are doing it on their own. Would you please start building activities for them? You know, and like this is going to be very helpful. So thank you for it.
That's awesome. Great minds think alike. But yeah, okay, I will move on to the last one, also because I want to make sure we have time for all of the sharing and questions at the end. But yeah, the student-built activities, as we've kind of been touching on throughout this call, how students can build activities for themselves. From the benefits side, like students can create unlimited practice at any time. Yeah, like James was saying, like you don't have to wait for your teacher to create one. And it can be a follow-up to a previous activity, like I mentioned earlier. So let me share really quickly what that can look like. So for example, like in this activity, I, for one, made a submission to it. This is about like natural selection and genetic variation. And then feedback, or Flint gives me this feedback about like where I did well, where I could improve. And this create a follow-up activity is always an option for students. So they can either like create one themselves, or if you're like the owner of this activity, like I am here, I can also go in and see like, oh, Jessica seemed to struggle with asking specific questions when she didn't understand concepts, and like she seemed to have room to grow on this activity. So I could also create a follow-up activity for her and then send it to her. So either way, like if I click on this, Flint will put in the context of how the student did on the last activity, and then it's the same flow of like, okay, what do you want students to focus on? It'll ask you a couple extra questions about the context there, and then you can create another activity that is more personalized to where we can address what that student could do better. Yeah. But yeah, I think like some limitations here with like students creating their own activities. I understand there's like a lot of concern around how this might play out. And so from what we've seen, at least, like school policy on this needs to be crystal clear. Students need to know like how and in what ways they are allowed to use AI to further their studying and their own personal learning. Yeah, and then also I think students need to be taught how to critically evaluate the AI, because it still gets stuff wrong. It's still like sometimes, especially when they're like creating their own activities, they might also want to test it out for themselves to see if it's like teaching them in a productive way. Sometimes it still tends to be, you know, too friendly and give too much, and showing the students how like, hey, you can tell it to be less helpful, even though this might like not be it may not make it easier for you, but we promise this will make the test easier at least. But yeah, showing some of those examples to students and how they can make sure that what they're creating is going to work well for them. But yeah, but this can be done similarly to how teachers create activities. So let me actually go back and start a new one. Yeah, but if I wanted to, as a student, create an activity, this could be a custom one, or they also have the option to use any of these shortcuts here. Okay, so I could create a custom activity, and you can tell students to just like share what it is that they need to practice or want to focus on with Flint here. And so I can say like, hey, I have a AP Physics test coming up on collisions, and I just can't seem to focus. Can you explain it to me using capybaras and help me generate some practice. And the fun part of this is like, you can tell students that they can personalize it as much to their interest as you want. So like here, I want it to use capybaras. Maybe that's my favorite animal. Maybe it's just because there's a lot of social media rage around it. But yeah, so it's going to similarly ask me for some clarifying context. Yes, it's AP Physics 1. Can we do both types of collisions? And I want guided discussion with examples and practice problems. And so Flint is really acting as a guide for both teachers and students when they want to create these activities. And so here it will create an AP Physics 1 activity that covers both elastic and inelastic collisions using our capybara friends as engaging examples. And it draws a little capybara for me to start off the activity, and then it's going to set up that activity for me as well. But yeah, I've heard of some examples at schools where there have been some schools who were just like starting out using Flint. And I think sometimes the teachers are a bit intimidated by the AI, and they actually just add the students in that class create activities to show the teacher how easy it is. And the teacher was like, oh, shoot, yeah, this is a lot more simple than I expected. And the kids are getting it. So I get it also. But yeah, so this is now an example of capybara collisions adventure. Yeah. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions, add any thoughts. I know, Micah, you've been working with students a lot to create their own activities. Don't know if you want to share anything there.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll share my screen here in a second. Well, I mean, one quick, just I think piggyback note on the teacher created activities and a +1 for the like reoccurring training model, I think works really well. So yeah, you can absolutely create an activity for a specific part of a specific unit, and then it's, you know, it's really helpful, and then it's done. And you can create things that students can continually go back to, or that adults can go back to, right? So I created an activity for myself and other teachers that's just built as a helpful, knowledgeable graduate assistant. And it, you know, it has our website and it has our student handbook and our faculty handbook and knows everything about the school and Catholic Jesuit education and you know, curriculum design and all this sort of stuff, so that way you can just go into it and ask these questions without having to give all that context over and over and over again every time. It just becomes this helpful reoccurring tool. And in that sense, you know, I love Flint because it defaults to not just doing the work for the students, but trying to help them figure out how to do the work, which is great. If you're an adult though, like I know how to write subplans, right? Like I don't need it to teach me how to write subplans in order to do it. I just need the subplans sometimes. So, you know, you just set it in this reoccurring model to help the user with whatever they want, even if it doesn't seem school related. And then it just becomes a kind of all helpful tool. I mean, to that end though, on the student front, I'm going to share, I'll share some examples here with you. We've had a lot of success, yeah, with teachers creating activities, but I think just as many with kids creating activities. This is one of my favorites and one of the first, frankly. We did not, at this point, we hadn't told students that they could do this or how to do it or anything. And all of a sudden, one of our AP English language students created an activity to give himself feedback on practice essays going into the AP exam last year. And if you look at the settings in there, it's really complex, right? In terms of what he asked it to do and how he asked it to do it. And you know, he was using it and kind of shared it with some classmates, and they were almost felt like it was taboo and they were having to do it secretly. And the teacher's like, oh, what are you working on? And they showed her and she's like, this is amazing. And they shared it with the whole class. And before you know it, kids in the class are just firing practice essays at this thing and getting really good feedback based on College Board's rubric going into the practice exam, which was not something that the teacher would have ever had time to do for those kids. And again, my favorite part about that is that I didn't show them how to do that. I didn't tell them how to do it. They just figured out how to do it and figured out how to share it with each other, which again is just a good sign of students seeing the value there. Some other examples that I've come across. This student he's an engineering student, built an activity to help him design a canoe. We have kids build canoes out of cardboards. We have a pool on campus. They have to put them in the pool and race them, so there's incentive for them to do it well so they don't sink. And I love this one because it's such student language here. Help me to figure out equations for canoe, along with helping me design the boat and figure out material usage, measurements, and stuff. But when he went through it, it helped him with really complex stuff, right? Mirroring the equation, giving him graphs, all sorts of really complex engineering and calculation stuff here. See, I did it stuff that he was able to use to effectively design his canoe. I haven't seen if he's floated it yet or not, but I bet he's on a good start here. And he had access to this tool just to help him think through all that, not just to do it for him, but to help him think through it. This student, I mean, we talk a lot about this academic stuff, but this student built an activity to master flush joints in a class that we have called 3D Industrial Arts. So through guided hands-on exercises, students master the fundamentals of joint preparation, assembly, and finishing. The activity emphasizes safety procedures, proper tool usage, and quality craftsmanship. So just a very different example there. This student built an activity to help work through geometric proofs to show triangle congruence using the side angle side criterion. Pretty standard there, and also really helpful in that it walked, he would insert a screenshot like, help solve this, right? And it didn't just do it, it helped him do it and asked him questions along the way about what was in there, and then gave him feedback. And then at some point he said, I'm unsure. So then it helped him understand what was in there, and then he moved on. This was one that a student made on their own for an essay for Call of the Wild, which is pretty standard. Although when I actually looked into it, the student wasn't doing it for himself. It was pretty clear he was doing it for his younger sibling. I recognized the teacher's name and the format from another school who was a younger grade. So he was helping a sibling get feedback on an essay using our tool rather than himself. And then this one just blows my mind. We've got a team of kids building a CubeSat, which is like a Rubik's Cube sized microsatellite. And they were talking with someone at Arizona State University about some solar panels that would work in space for that. And they had a lead on there, but they had to figure out what it was that they were talking about. So they built an activity to help them understand what perovskite semiconductor technology in solar panels was. And I have I can't even pronounce that, like, let alone do I understand what any of this is. But our kids now understand that and know what that is, and we're prepared to secure a partnership with ASU because of their understanding of that. That I don't know that anybody on campus could have told them that, right, or prepared them for that, or given them that information in a way that a high school sophomore, junior, or senior was able to understand. And now our kids understand it. And it wasn't because I built that activity for them. It was their idea, like, hey, we've got to teach our group how to do this. And they just did it. So yeah, all that to say, the kids clearly see the value in it, whether teachers are doing it or not. And that's something, it's definitely something really helpful.
Those are such niche and exciting examples. Thank you, Micah. Yeah, does anyone want to add on top of that of how they've been seeing students use Flint, or how they want students to use Flint even? Or if there's any questions for the people who have shared today, or for me, or Sohan now that he's here too.
My school is just getting started with Flint, and I want to roll out Flint as a AI tutor for students. But I'm curious about what first steps looked like as far as what guidance was given to students, because there's a part of me that wants to just roll it out and say go play with it, because I think they'll figure out a lot. But I'm curious about folks who are further along on that journey. Like, what were there assemblies? Were there guidelines that were shared with students? And then how did you get students to start to use it? Because I could see it generate a lot of momentum once you get some early adopters. But I'm just curious about those initial steps.
Yeah, so James, go ahead.
No, Micah, go.
I was just gonna say, I mean, we didn't start by actively promoting it with kids. They figured it out, and then it was word of mouth from there. And then, then it was easier to mention, like, hey, everybody, like, here's a tool, right? And it's become, I don't know that fully pervasive is the word, but kids are exposed to it in a lot of different ways. And a lot of different classes and a lot of just activities. One of our coolest, I think, activities was we had every club president this year had to complete an activity to plan out a semester's worth of club meetings in order to register their club. That way, no club could claim like, we don't have anything to talk about today. They had plenty to talk about. But we're exposing kids to it that way, so they're starting to see it. In terms of guidance, we've tried to give students guidance. I'll share a link to our AI guidelines that are just updated for this semester, which I think are pretty progressive in terms of defining levels of acceptable use and flipping the paradigm that some level of AI usage is now acceptable by default. So that has been helpful for our kids, I think, and for us to talk about that with classes and kids and send videos out and whatnot. And then also just this semester, we put together a prompt writing framework, which I just shared as well. Because one of the pieces of feedback that I do have for kids often is, hey, you're not doing this very well, right? That was a really lousy prompt. And teachers too sometimes. So the more effective we can all get at prompt writing, the better. That's one, I think, big plus for the new format and how to create activities is that it's very conversational, as opposed to feeling like you're having to figure out computer code. And AI, I think, just tends to work better when you're treating it like a human conversation rather than treating it like a coder. So, Joel, I don't know, those are some random thoughts there. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
No, that was super helpful. So it sounds like the students got exposed to it through teachers sharing activities, and then once they knew that's a platform they have access to, then they kind of came up with their own ideas. So that's helpful for me. Yeah, it's a different point of entry than what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and frankly, like ideas that I never would have come up with, right? Which is the coolest part.
No, thank you. Super cool.
Joel, and then for me, like I stated this earlier, but I'm almost on the opposite end of it. Like, the teachers are my resistors here. So we have a thing called seminar. So it's it's sort of just like a non-teaching departments are able to push in for a class period occasionally, the way our schedule rotates. And so at the beginning of the year, I signed up for a bunch of those, just took them, and I did a session with each of the 4 grade levels we're at the high school, and I did a session with each of the 4 grade levels, sort of just very similar to what Micah was just saying, where it's like, all right, so first of all, what is AI, right? Just understanding like natural language versus LLM versus whatever, just to give them sort of like an overview of like, what is it, right? It's in your life. What is it? And then I did a prompt, like, what are the prompting steps? Same idea. And then I ended each session by giving them an assignment in our Canvas LMS platform where they had to go in and build their own Flint tutor, and then they had to like share the tutor to me in Canvas, like as an assignment, right? So just making them do it. And so for me, it's like, if the teachers are gonna give me the pushback, the students are all in on this stuff. So like I went student first, and then when we have a community period every day built into our schedules, and the kids are always hanging near my office in our communities area, and they're always out there studying. So I took it upon myself to just kind of start to be nosy and just be like, what are you working on? Bio. Hey, let me show you this really cool bio tutor. Like, oh, what are you working on? Chem? Dude, chem's hard. Let me show you this chem tutor. Like, I just started to be like nosy that way. And now the more that I pushed it out to the students are really taking control. And like I said, like now I'm having that conversation with teachers again. Like I said 10 minutes ago, like there's 15 kids in your algebra class that are using this. Do you maybe want to create an activity yourself so that the kids are more structured than what they're doing? So I was almost the opposite approach as Micah, but so much overlap to just say like, build one, kids. It's not that hard. Try to build one. Look how easy it is. Now build one for yourself.
Oh, no, thank you guys. I really appreciate the helpful feedback there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a common theme there is that you have to like let kids know that it's okay that they're doing this almost. I know, I think when Mike and I talked about like how his school had rolled out Flint, you mentioned that you had like a student AI committee even that was on board with like forming the AI policy, and you were asking them to be super involved in all of those conversations. And I think letting students know like, hey, like we want you to be involved in how this shapes how you're learning and how you're studying and all of that. And yeah, just like giving them that permission to explore almost, because I think like one of the big perks of Flint is that it is a place for everyone, the students, the teachers, the administrators. And so if we don't encourage the students to be a part of like playing around in Flint and experimenting with it, they might just take like their curiosity with that elsewhere, you know, and then you like lose the oversight of that, you lose the insight and the sharing ability between like students and teachers. So I think it's really cool also how James talks about how, you know, like, hey, I can like get the students on board with this and then they can share it with their teachers. And like there's that ecosystem of really talking about how AI can be used for learning. So yeah.
If I could just jump in with one more thing, Joel, something that you will probably encounter is you will encounter a situation where somebody's tutor just goes off the rails, right? It's just going to have an issue. And that could erode confidence really quickly. I'll say this, and I've said it out loud to everybody that I've been introducing it to, like when you see a problem, share the link to that session specifically. And if you share it into the help thing on Flint, Sohan and the other engineers 100%, and this isn't just because he showed up on the call, I was going to say this either way, like 100% are like, wow, thank you for sharing that. Like, we didn't realize it was doing that. Let us tweak it. So, I always like to say that to everybody here, especially the teachers. I'm like, it's evolving, it's learning, right? And so it will make mistakes. Like when you're giving it, if you're giving it AP Physics 1 problems, like maybe sometime you're going to encounter an issue. We've been having some issues with our computer science ones, and I've just been sharing them like, here's where, you can see where the kid was doing great. And then suddenly it just gave a completely incorrect answer to the student. And just say to them, like, that might happen. Please share me the link. I can send the link into Flint. And it's done wonders for the teacher's confidence here that, like, if there is a problem, it's not like, well, it's broken, never use it again. Right. So.
No, thank you.
Great. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Otherwise, we can wrap the session up a bit early.
One question, Lulu, on Facebook back in December, you guys put out there that you were going to start taking ideas for activities to build. Is that still an open offer?
Yes, always.
So do you want us to like submit that through the Facebook page, or is it just like we can send it through, like if a teacher's got an idea for like, hey, I need some help building this thing for, Python and coding or whatever, like you want them sending it through Flint? Like, do you guys have like a system for that?
Honestly, the idea of collecting ideas was very loosey-goosey, one could say. So yeah, feel free to, I think if you sent it in the Facebook group, then maybe there would be like more visibility, see if other people also want to jump on top of that idea. Or if there's like materials that you want to attach to it and all of that, feel free to just like send us an email.
Okay. I found I get teachers to on board with something faster if most of the work is done for them first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and actually one point there, we're putting together like a more comprehensive library of like example use cases. Still trying to figure out the exact format for that. Might be a series of blog posts, might be like a Padlet as well. So yeah, open call to any sort of content or ideas, so we can basically add it to either of those. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, Lindsay is saying, piggybacking off of your comments, James, it would be a cool idea to make an activity where Flint purposefully gives incorrect responses to encourage students to catch the AI getting it wrong. I've actually seen a couple teachers try this as like their first ever Flint activity, so that they kind of set the expectation of like, hey, like, look, you need to like make sure that you're evaluating each answer and it's not all knowing and it can be wrong and sometimes very wrong at times. So yeah, that's a really good point. Great. Yeah, if there are no other questions, I will very quickly wrap up here. But yeah, essentially we have another session coming up next week that kind of is, I would say, on a similar lines of thought as this one. Justin Sorrenzia from Episcopal Academy is going to presenting about how he's been working with students and teachers to make student thinking visible with AI. So really, I think more on the side of like, okay, the students are using it. How do we like evaluate their responses? How do we like kind of keep track of like where the learning gaps are? And really, since it's all conversational, how can we leverage that portion of Flint to make learning better for the students? Yeah, and we've got some more in the weeds, not in the weeds. We've got some more that I'm planning in the moment, and I'll let you all know when those are available as well. But yeah, and then the recordings will be posted here on our website under webinars, but I'll also send out a newsletter when it is live. Great. Thank you so much for everyone here. Yeah, let me know if there's additional questions. Happy to stay on.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Great. Thank you.